So welcome everybody to the Nat Kringoudis session of the 7-Day Business Fuel Challenge. I hope you are having a fabulous day. It is a wonderful autumn day here in Sydney, and I'm in my outside office, which I enjoy, complete with netball whistles in the background today, so hopefully they're not too much for you. But today I am joined by the amazing Nat Kringoudis. Nat is the list is long, and that's part of what I love, and I love all the parts that you integrate together. But primarily, you're a doctor of Chinese medicine, an acupuncturist, an author of multiple published books, the founder of the Pagoda Tree, and creator of the Debunking series as well. So welcome, Nat, and thank you very much for coming on with us today.
Thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here.
So I guess the first thing I'd love to discuss is what Chinese medicine is, what TCM is, what being the doctor of Chinese medicine means. And the reason I'd like to is that I've been fortunate to experience TCM be introduced for about 5 years, and I think it's amazing. However, I don't think it's something that's widely known about, and I'd love to understand what it is and why you started down that route.
Well, I mean, Chinese medicine's a really different modality when it comes to treating the body, but the more that we can correlate it with Western medicine, I find for my patients, the more responsive they are, because it's not some voodoo weird concept that doesn't work. The reality is it works really beautifully. And so it really diagnoses and looks at the body based on signs and symptoms, not necessarily by a specific diagnosis. For example, you might have endometriosis, I might have endometriosis, but our symptoms are very different. And so we would treat you according to your symptoms based on, kind of like putting it all together and being able to decipher what's going on. So it is a little bit tricky to understand, but you might treat someone for endometriosis the same way you're treating them for a headache, which sounds really confusing when we use our Western brain. But if we look at it from an Eastern sense, we might say, okay, well, the pain for both is really sharp and stabbing. It's not a dull ache. So therefore, it's two different categories already. So then we get more curious about other signs and symptoms and kind of collate them to come up with that diagnosis. Now, I'm an acupuncturist as well, and there's lots of questions about acupuncture and how that works, and there's lots of theories as to how that works. From a Chinese medicine sense, we believe that each organ has a meridian that runs either down the arm or the leg, and certain locations on that meridian will influence the way that organ works. So, for example, if the liver's overactive and we need to calm it down, then we can use points along the liver meridian to do that. Or maybe, your digestive system's not working well, so we use points to encourage it to work better. Now, the cool thing about acupuncture is that they recently, or not so recently, a little while ago, they did some research where they injected dye into where we thought the meridians were. And what happened was the dye actually followed the pathway of what we would consider a channel or a meridian. So these spaces exist. And it's quite interesting. Once you understand different points and locations, you can palpate a point and feel it at the end of the channel, which indicates that it is something that exists within your body. The other idea is that it intercepts the messages sent to the brain to get a different outcome of what might be happening. So if there's a lot of pain, this is really easy to understand. Acupuncture is very effective for pain management and pain relief. And that's basically because it changes that response that your brain is triggering for the rest of your body, and it really allows that area to calm down. So there's lots of theories as to how it works, why it works. At the end of the day, I'm out here going, it just works, so let's use it. And we have great success in the clinic with our patients. And then, we offer a range of online care as well, and everything that I do, obviously my background is TCM, or traditional Chinese medicine, but I also really love to integrate that with the Western mindset, because that for me is the icing on the cake, and that's when we really get great results, when we can understand physiologically what's happening from a Western perspective, what's happening from a TCM perspective, and let's marry them together and get an amazing result.
So let's talk about both of those things. Let's start with meridians and tell what a meridian is for those who would like to know.
A meridian is just a channel or a pathway that we utilize to treat an organ. Like I said, it either goes down the arm or down the leg, depending on which organ that you're talking about, and different points along that meridian will influence the way that organ is working. And pretty much that's what it is. And it's think of it, I say to patients, think of it like corridors and certain doors you can open and close to influence the flow of nutrients, the flow of energy, because all of this is very much the basis of Chinese medicine. And, you know, it's a little bit more than that, but if you can start to understand that concept, it doesn't quite sound so, I guess, weird in a really non-weird way.
Yeah, and I think the proof is in the pudding. I mean, the thing and we'll no doubt get into the space of chatting about intuition, but the biggest thing I've found around the meridian lines, for example, and the most way that I learn about them is in the yoga space. So I know TCM has many parts to it and many different elements that you can practice. And I guess I do a type of yoga which specifically links in the meridians. And what that's actually taught me a lot is about the intuition and what's going on in my body. And I love the education side comes with TCM and the Eastern philosophies. It's giving me awareness in my body as much as it is about actually treating what I'm presenting with at the time. So I've really found that to be very, very empowering, and I absolutely love it. And to know, you know, and yeah, I love content. I love to learn things and understand how they work for me. It's been fantastic. Integration has been something I have faced as a challenge. So tell me about this, the concept of how you say you integrate the both and the Eastern and the Western philosophies, because that's certainly been a challenge for me in my mind.
Well, it was a challenge for me too, because my background prior to studying Chinese medicine was biosciences. So I rocked up on my first day. I rocked up on my first day at uni for Chinese medicine, and I remember ringing my mum and saying, I don't know what I've done. This is ridiculous. Like this is just doesn't even make sense. This doesn't work. And she laughed at me and was like, just stick with it, you know, as all parents do, because especially of that generation, they just want you to have a university degree at the end of the day and make some money. And so it was really interesting. I almost had to unlearn everything that I'd learned or let it go and park it, which was really difficult because my brain kept going back there. But once I did that, I was able to really draw on this totally unique paradigm to diagnose and treat. Now, obviously, you know, we do have a lot of people come into the clinic with very specific problems, like I said, endometriosis or PCOS or infertility or whatever it might be. And it really is important to understand from a physiological perspective what's happening in their body based on their signs and symptoms as well. So again, their signs and symptoms are going to vary, which allows us to then diagnose deeper, if you like. For example, if someone's coming in and they've got endometriosis and perhaps they're overweight and they might show signs of a lot of inflammation in the body, we might need to look at focusing on their liver from both a Chinese medicine perspective and a Western perspective. So it's kind of like ticking off the boxes and really understanding. Another example is ovulation. I find this is really wild. It's quite funny. From a Chinese medicine sense, we can very often draw on the connection of the heart and the uterus to support ovulation. Now, from a Western sense, that's not what happens. It's your pituitary telling your body what to do to trigger ovulation. So if I can explain to people, though, when their emotions are really playing a role in their body not ovulating, and we start to treat the heart, then all of a sudden they start to find that their cycles fall naturally back into place again. Now, I'm probably not treating their heart. I'm probably actually treating their pituitary, right? But from a Chinese medicine sense, we're treating their heart. So this is where you've got to kind of marry the ideas together and let go of any reservation, because at the end of the day, as long as we're getting a result, I think that's the main aim. But it's coming back to what you're saying as well, and it's being able to educate the patient on what we're doing, because so often people fear what we don't know, right? So there's a lot of reservation around acupuncture and Chinese medicine because we don't really understand it. And so once we can start to get that concept, it really does help.
Fantastic. And I can see Rafe there. So we'll grab you on for a question, Rafe, if we've got one in a minute. But, I'm getting some bad feedback, Rafe. Can you? Oh, okay. Hopefully that's come down now. Gone. Beautiful. Okay. jump back on if you wanted to ask us a question, Rafe. So I think that's fantastic. I think one of the other things you do amazingly is, and why I love to follow you and see all of what you're creating on your site, natkringoudis.com, is how you translate all of that into very bite-sized pieces. I know you're known by your clients for how simple you make what can be otherwise incredibly complicated. I would love to chat about who you work with. In terms of a lot of the time, I think people feel that they're alone and they're the only person that's experiencing what they are, especially for really smart women. And can you tell me a bit about who you're working with?
Well, I mean, I guess we work with women of all ages and all stages, to be honest. But if I had to look at the most common or the demographic in age, I guess it's probably around 18 to 45-year-old women that's what we see mostly in the clinic. I mean, that said, I've really tried to reach out more so to young women, get into schools, start to share the knowledge from a young age, because I think that's actually the only way we're going to overcome these problems around fertility and the gynecological issues that we're seeing, because 95% of the time these are treatable things that we are told there is no solution for. And really it lies in what we do day to day, not necessarily what you do when you walk in my clinic and you sit down, you can have a beautiful treatment, and that's certainly our aim. And we're here to facilitate that, but it's actually what you do when you leave that counts. So this is why I think we do have to dissect it and give bite-sized pieces so that it's tangible exercises or tangible things that they need to add to their daily practice that actually work. That's what makes the difference. You can't just come in here once every fortnight and expect us to do the work. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. But when you can educate someone, they can understand why they need to do something. And you know what, if they start feeling better, of course they're going to continue to do that. Because for a 16-year-old, the idea of not being able to have children doesn't really faze them so much. It's more about how they look and feel, right? So we need to tap into that. Whereas, maybe someone who's in their mid-20s to late 20s, they're starting to get concerned about that. So it's packaging up that information in different ways that's going to resonate with different age groups, I believe, to make that difference. And it is tricky because, as much as we don't want the focus for young women to be about the way that they look, that's the way it is at the moment as it stands. And we're here to try and create that change. But in the meanwhile, we've still got to get in and educate. So, my focus very much does become around, oh, wow, you're holding weight in your tummy. Do you understand why that might be? And using that as my in, and then kind of letting that go and moving into the other juicy information that they need to learn. But we're living at a particularly interesting time when it comes to treating these type of health conditions.
That's understanding though the why and where weight sits and why it sits is something I found to be incredibly insightful from Chinese medicine, and particularly around the hormone side of things. So when I was in preparation for second bub with my doctor of Chinese medicine, who the guys can meet later on, Lisa and I are chatting more about the yoga therapy side of things. But the biggest thing I learned when I was working with her second time round was actually, okay, I can see your hormones are doing this based on exactly where it's sitting on your torso. And I'm like, what? And she's like, yeah, okay, so you're lean and you're fit and you feel great, but what I can see is the hormones sitting right there on the ribs. And so just the insight and to help me understand. And so then further down the line, again, there becomes a bit of inflammation in an odd spot. I go, oh, okay, I wonder what that is. I don't know what that is. Let me find out. And I just think it's so amazing. And we are going to talk about your ebook, Educate Yourself, at the end. And anybody who's already signed up will get a copy of that. So people can jump on newmanonline.com.au site and they will be able to get a free copy of that. So education is a big part of what you do. Now let's talk about fertility, and let's talk about it not being just about babies. I have had that mantra associated with you forever. I love it. It makes me, I've been called the grow fertility of soil and fertility of businesses. And for me, everything comes back to creating foundations for fertility in all parts of life. So tell me about what it means to you.
Well, we created this not infographic because it was moving. What do you call that? animation. We created this animation, and it was about this woman it was all about the soil, right? And she had to feed it, and she had to nurture it, she had to water it, and needed sunshine. She had to go out and turn it over and really look after it. And then when she was ready to plant a seed, so she did that, and all of a sudden a tree grew. And it was like, you've got to nurture your health until the time is right for you, if you so want to have a baby. And if you don't, that's okay too. But it's still important to make sure that that soil is fertile, because that extends to every area of your life. And your body is super smart. It will just literally say to you, you know what, Rebecca, you haven't been looking after yourself, so I'm going to switch that part off because you don't need that to survive. It doesn't mean you don't have horrible symptoms in the meanwhile, but that's what it will do, because we don't need that for us to be able to breathe and live on a day-to-day basis. But for us to feel sane, nourished, nurtured, normal, you do need your reproductive and sex hormones to be working properly. So I really had this barrier of people with the word fertility. People were like, and even now to this day, I still meet people and they'll say, oh, what do you do? And I'll say, oh, my specialist area is women's health and fertility. And they're like, oh, well, I don't need you. I'm like, well, you probably do actually, because it's not just about babies. And there's such resistance to it. And there's such resistance to natural conception or natural contraception as well. Like, when I say to people, well, there's really only a couple of days in the cycle you can fall pregnant, they're like, oh, no, I'm not trusting that. And it's like, really? Because I've been doing that for a really long time and it works pretty well.
And they're the things, like, they're the little things. They're the little things that can make such a big difference to people's lives. And I think that's part of what this Fuel Challenge is about, Nat. It's about talking about those little 1%ers. We chatted with Mel Ambrosini the other day about taking 3 breaths, and debunking meditation. And, we're talking about all those little things that people that are normal to understand, say, natural contraception, but not commonly known and not commonly educated. I would love to jump into the hormones discussion. And how you, I guess, probably for a similar reason, you've very much gone down the hormone revolutionist side. Now, I'd like to talk about hormones because I think we just focus on a couple. And in men, we focus on some. In women, we focus on others. And I'd like to talk more about the whole picture of hormones. So tell me about what hormones are and share with us some education around that.
So we're really good at blaming our hormones, aren't we? For any time that we don't think things are going our way, or we don't feel good, or we're moody. I love that one. We're moody, I'm hormonal. What does it mean? I say to people all the time, do you understand what that means? Like, you're saying it. We're all really good, or our husbands are really good at blaming it on hormones. Oh, it must be that time of the month, you're hormonal. We associate it with being crabby. But it's so much more than that. Hormones are your chemical messages telling your body what to do in any given millisecond of any given day. And I think we need to come back to appreciating them, not hating on them, because we need them. We need them on our side. And if we can understand them, if we can nurture them better, there's no reason for us to have to blame anything on our hormones, more so using any signs and symptoms as tools to understand what's going on within us. So, the main hormones I try and educate my patients in are our sex hormones and our stress hormones, because they're the ones that impact our bodies mostly on a day-to-day basis. And your body craves balance. It wants your sex hormones and your stress hormones to have this beautiful relationship where perhaps you are stressed and perhaps you do need to tap into the goodness of cortisol and adrenaline to get something done or to save your life, or, they're what's released when there is high stress. And what happens when they are in, excess amounts is that it kind of just turns off our sex hormones. Because again, we don't need them. This is that whole idea before. We don't need them to thrive. We don't need our sex hormones to be able to wake up in the morning and to live. So that's what our stress hormones are designed to do. They're designed to come along and say, hey, everybody, I'm here. You've all got to shut up and listen. And you're going to do what I've got to tell you right in this moment, because I'm here to save you from yourself, basically. But in doing that, long term, this is where we start to see problems occur, because our sex hormones aren't supposed to be turned off long term. They need to do their job too to make us feel good. And so we're living at a time where there's this constant stream for many women and men, this constant stream of cortisol and adrenaline, just because we're busy and we're stressed and we're not necessarily nourishing our bodies properly or thinking kind things, or we're living in, toxic environments, whatever it might be, whatever the stressor is, because all of those things are seen as stress within your body, will impact 100% your sex hormones. Now, your main sex hormones, most of us have heard of estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, and we all need a good balance of those, both men and women alike. Yes, men have more testosterone, women have less, but if you don't have it, then you don't make your other hormones. So it's really important that there's this good balance. And then for women especially, we have this beautiful dance that our hormones do every month where, estrogen's present at the first in larger amounts at the first part of our cycle. Yep. And then when we ovulate, progesterone kicks in and it does its job until that whole cycle happens again and again and again. What is happening, and I think it's really important for people to understand the basics, is that cortisol, which is that bossy stress hormone, and progesterone, which is that hormone that we need to ovulate, they basically fight it out to do a job. And cortisol will always win out over progesterone. And what that means is that progesterone doesn't get to do its job properly. So estrogen just keeps on climbing and climbing and climbing. Now, that can make us feel crazy. That can make us not ovulate. It can see things like weight gain, anxiety, depression, all sorts of things when our estrogen builds. Estrogen's also associated with breast cancer and other reproductive cancers in excess amounts. Endometriosis, we think, is also excess estrogen. We don't know a lot of, we know that it's estrogen, endometriosis is a funny one. We know a heap about it, but we don't know. And I suspect that's the case with pretty much everything in life, right? The more we know, the more we realize we don't know. So it's just about understanding, okay, if cortisol is doing that to my body, how can I lower my cortisol and lower that stress response so that my sex hormones will just naturally come back into line? But do you know what we do? And I see this time and time again, especially when it comes to fertility, is we're like, oh, wow, you've got too much estrogen. So what we're going to do is we're going to come along, we're going to give you more progesterone to fix the problem. That can never work, because if you've got excess estrogen, your body is doing that for a reason. We need to look at ways to lower that estrogen, and naturally your progesterone will just come back up again. So it's really important to understand what's actually going on. Another common thing we see with hormones, and especially our sex hormones, is that they might be really low. So perhaps we've been on the pill for a period of time, or a late bloomer, or we've got nutrient deficiencies. Perhaps we've had, an eating disorder, or we've had, you've been very active. So a lot of athletes find that their periods go missing, and it's because their sex hormones are actually just not working at all. So it's not that anything's in excess, it's that it's not actually doing its job. What we know is that when we start to build estrogen, again, progesterone will naturally follow suit. So it's this homeostatic environment where one is influencing the other always. And it's just a matter of pinpointing what's actually happening. And like we spoke about at the beginning, that's when you can marry these ideas together when it comes to Eastern and Western. Because if someone's got low hormones, then we can look at that and go, okay, what's not working from an Eastern sense? Is the gut not assimilating properly? What are the bowels like? This is when it's this whole journey that you go on to actually decipher what's going on in somebody's body, and then be able to create the change that they need and really start to repair. And I don't believe really that there's not one condition that you can't thrive in, no matter what. Your body, if you set your body to reach its maximum potential, no matter how sick, no matter how, bad the outcome or prognosis, you can set the body up to thrive in any given moment. I think that's what we need to come back to. We're very good at looking at that, definite end result, but it's what happens in the meanwhile to get there, and it's never ending. Like that's living. You've got to actually commit to living, right? And commit to supporting your body in the right way, and the rest will follow suit.
So those fertility basics are exactly what we've integrated into the front end of the Grow project, so that because we're typically working with women who don't have babies yet, or have one and want to have another one, and they're really focused on their business. So in that 12 months, we work 80% on the business side and 20% very much on the health basics. And it's very much from that fertility, creating that soil so that when you want to plant the seed, you actually can. I would love for you to share with us your top 3 tips on fertility.
Yes. So the number one fertility crusher is stress. And if we can't get a handle on stress for the reasons that we've just explained, then we can't expect our body to, play the game. And, people say to me all the time, oh, I'm working on that. Like, I get it. I'm working on it. It's not a negotiable. As far as I see, if you want to actually take charge of your health, that's where you need to start. Because if you're not removing the driver, how can you then expect the symptoms to go away? We're really good at treating symptoms. We've developed this method and paradigm, especially with Western medicine, that we treat the symptom, but we don't actually look at the problem. And that is a disaster. So that would be my second thing, is that we need to look at treating the root cause and not the actual symptoms of the problem, because you're never going to remedy anything by just treating symptoms. You actually end up like a dog chasing its tail constantly. It can be okay for a little while. If you need to get your head above water, let's look at the initial symptoms and what can we remedy to, if you've got terrible headaches or period pain, let's look at a short-term solution. But the long-term solution for this to actually work is removing that driver. So stress, looking at the root cause, and then it's also lifestyle. Like, what are we doing day to day to fuel our bodies properly? If we can't get back to that either, you can't burn the candle at both ends and expect your body to be okay with that ongoing. It doesn't work, and it's counterproductive. And if you are doing that and you're sending emails at 12 o'clock at night, it doesn't look good from a business perspective as far as I'm concerned, because you need to actually have the downtime and practice what you preach and do the right things. And you make ridiculous mistakes too that end up being like, they can be disastrous as well. Spell check and autocorrect sometimes isn't your friend. So I think looking into those other little gems, it's true. I know I've seen some wild things come through. And if I receive an email at 3 a.m. from, unless they're overseas, that's reasonable. They don't have to work with my time. But local and shore stuff, I don't even open it. I'm like, that is not okay. Like, for me, it's not okay. Don't do that. So, it's about creating that balance and being really realistic. And the only other one thing I would say, and we're probably touching this anyway, but what we don't do with our health is create health goals. We do it with everything else. We do it with business. We do it with, if I want to go on a holiday, I need to actually, pick a date, and then I do all these things to work towards it and have a goal. We do it with building a house. We do it with everything in life. We don't do it with our health for some reason. So I say to people, can you please imagine for me the best version of you and where we're going? Like, who do you want to be? Who is this person? What does she look like? How does she feel? And then it's like, okay, and what are we going to do to get there? And these are the first 3 things that we're going to start to do to create that change. What I find so often is people are looking for an overhaul. They want an overhaul. They like the idea of that. It doesn't work though, because they don't stick to it. So if we can create a goal and we can create 3 steps to begin with, then we can start to integrate that in and create some new changes, and then we keep on growing with that. And that's really important, I think, for our health.
I think it's incredibly important. And I also think it's important because health is a journey, like a business. You can go, and we'll chat about that on Monday and Tuesday with the Sherlaws guys about, growing a business is a journey, and health is a journey as well, and how you choose to live it now. And I think the main reason I've found it to be really important to understand and to have the feeling of what it can be like is there are downs. And there's some times when you are working really hard, and both my husband and I have been through this. And, when you get to that point where you're so close, and all of a sudden things just feel like they're really not working. And actually in some ways, that's actually a good sign, because when your body's reacting to stuff, it's actually, you've turned your system back on. The fact that you're getting hay fever because of you've had this tiny contamination of gluten is an example that's old. It's actually not anything to do with what's going on in the air. It's actually a reaction of the body trying to get that gluten out. And the fact that you're so susceptible is a real down. It's like, oh my gosh, I've been doing all this work, but actually this is happening to me, and it's so disheartening. I think though, when you know what the goal is and you're working with someone like you who can actually facilitate that process and help you understand this is part of the journey. There's going to be awesome bits and there's going to be really less than awesome bits. So I think the journey is really fantastic, and our experience is certainly that it pays off, and the energy that comes from it is amazing. Part of the reason I decided to start the Grow Project was because how I felt when I was incredibly healthy, and especially getting ready to have my second baby, I was like a superwoman. And that was actually, I hadn't felt like that since I was probably about 15. And that's many, many years in between. So to know what health can feel like is amazing. And having that goal and seeing other people and seeing what they're experiencing, I think is actually a really positive thing. There's a lot of commotion around role models and they shouldn't be doing this. And then you see actually the work they're putting in. And it's like, well, they made a choice. They made a very conscious choice here to actually do something about it. And I think understanding the journey and working with somebody like you on the journey is really important.
Yeah, thank you. I agree. Absolutely. And I think, you're so spot on. The other flip side of that, we're living in a time where there is so much education available to us. And, people will come in and they would have done a lot of things and they're on the right track. And sometimes, they need that reassurance, but sometimes they're looking for that other thing that they think that's going to magically appear. And it's like, no, it's all there. It's all within you. You're doing it already. You've just got to do it. You've got to keep living it. And it's not there's no magic bullet. There's no quick fix. Sometimes, something like your gut health can take 16 months to fully repair, provided nothing else gets in the way. So really, I say, this stuff's a lifetime. It's not lifetime as in it's a death sentence. It's a lifetime of nourishing your body. That's okay. That's not difficult. So I think it's also trusting and getting back into that intuition that we do know, and I can say things to patients all the time. And I'd say this to them. I say, I'm going to give you all of this information, and you're going to sit there and you're going to go, yep, I like that bit and I like that bit and I like that bit. And I'm going to park a few of those ideas, and there's 3 of those that you are never going to get me to do. And they're usually the 3 that they need to do. And we'll come back and revisit that conversation again at their next appointment or the one after. But it is about knowing and just trusting that and your body knows exactly what it needs in any given moment, and that this is a lifetime, because you might as well give it the best shot you can to make it as good as possible. And I say that to patients all the time. When's the last time you woke up and you were like, oh my gosh, that was the best sleep ever, like ever? No one does this, right? So why not? Why are you not having the best sleep ever? Let's work that out. And like you said, you got to a point where you're feeling really good. And we're going to have amazing times and we're going to have not so amazing times. That's just the way it goes. It's living. And those not so amazing times are when your body's trying to tell you something. But it's getting back to that, because we've settled for average, and that's not living. So let's get back to encouraging people to look in and why and tap into what's within them to take them on that journey.
And like anything, I think the more that you do it, the stronger the muscle is and the easier it is to do. When you're making a change, you've got to go through the mindset spaces and all the mind challenges. You've got your community around you who are supportive or not supportive. You've got the logistical side of things. So how do I actually implement this? And then you say the tiny things. And I can give a really good example of that, one I'm terrible at. And that's why, like, on the printable for the challenge, we've got all these different categories, Nat, of all the different areas of focus of fuel. And then we've got the 5 down here which fuel you up. You choose, the 5 different things. And we've got everything from business to podcasts to all kinds of things fueling you up. And I am going to hit you up for top 5. But the one on here I'm the worst at is actually chewing.
Yeah, right.
So just as an example of something I actually need to do and bring more conscious to, it's amazing how those little things can make a difference. And yes,
absolutely. You know what? I think chewing's interesting because after having kids, you learn to wolf your food down so quickly because especially in the early days. Like, I remember thinking, once I started living on solids and she was actually able to eat herself, I was in this bad habit of it was like woof. And then I got conscious around it one day. I'm like, wow, I'm eating so quickly. Like this is not good. This is not how we're designed to eat. And really just being mindful and slowing down. But chewing's a hard one. You're right. Like, we're speedy when it comes to eating these days.
So we've talked a lot about the women you work with and the problems generally that we're facing. We've talked about how you integrate East and West, and we are running over our time slightly. And now we've done that and you've dropped off. So hopefully you will drop back on in a second and we will be able to continue our conversation, because Nat, I would love to know and share with everybody a bit about what you have been working on. So hopefully you'll drop back on in a second. And if not, I can mention a bit about how you can connect with Nat. Nat has worked on an amazing series called the Debunking series. And she looks at all the things and debunks all the myths around what we have previously known to be causing issues in the areas of thyroid, in PCOS, in ovulation, and in stress. And they're amazing online courses, and Nat has kindly offered a 30% discount on all of those for anybody who has logged on to the Business Fuel Challenge. And you can get those by emailing, by hitting the Count Me In button on the website. And Jess, if you could put the link to our challenge in the live chat, that would be awesome, so that we can make sure we get that code out to everybody. And as I mentioned, we will also be emailing out details for how to get a copy of Nat's book, Educate Yourself. I was just introduced on about approaching these and helping people, and your 4 debunking elements that they can get from your website, and that you've kindly offered a discount on, which we will email them the discount code for. Do you want to tell us about anything else you've been working on in terms of how you help, aside from obviously in the clinic where people can find you at the Pagoda Tree? How else are you working with people?
Well, I mean, the Pagoda Tree is one arm of the business, definitely. You can hear me okay, yeah?
Yeah, thank you.
Is one element, and you know, everything else that sort of has followed has been, I don't know, an experiment, and it's just continued to grow. And then, you know, reaching a wider audience through writing and video and everything else we've created, e-courses and whatnot, has been just as rewarding, if sometimes not more, only because we're reaching people we would never have ever had the opportunity to even make the slightest difference in their life. So, you know, this is how we've created e-courses, and they're very specific. They're around specific issues: ovulation, PCOS, stress, thyroid, you know, and you know, it's just wild because it keeps opening up new doors. And I think, you know, as I've said to you before, it's all about repackaging information, because people need to hear things differently, see things differently, touch things differently. We're not all the same. So, you know, through my website, that really has been the catalyst to all of that and allowing me to connect with a wider audience. God bless social media, because that's also been just another door and another avenue to put this information out there that wouldn't have otherwise connected with so many people. And, you know, we have this love-hate relationship with social media. It's, you know, people roll their eyes at it, and for whatever reason they hate on it. And I'm like, oh man, I love it. I just love it, because it's just another way to connect with people, to create curiosity, to raise awareness. And I think, you know, teaching people to be the best version of themselves has a knock-on effect, because the minute they start doing it, they're leading an example that the next person's like, I want a bit of that. And how did you sort that out? And I don't know, we're just creating conversation and curiosity and giving. I think the more we can give, the more that we can get back as well. And obviously I need to also feel fulfilled, you know, with what we're doing as well. And we do give a lot of information, and I love that. And I love that kind of comes back in all sorts of different ways. And you know, I can be walking down the street and someone will be approach me, and it's very weird, let me tell you, but it's like, oh, I did your ovulation course, and now look, this is my son. And I'll be like, okay. But, you know, we're able to do that and to tap into different things. We're about to launch a membership program, which is going to be very interesting. And I think this is, you know, I'm really excited. It's probably the most thought and effort I've put into anything, only because everything else has been such a whirlwind, and I work at such a fast pace. I'm like, no, just get it out there for people to see it. I don't care if it's not perfect. I'm not a perfectionist, and that's why we can create so much content, I think, you know. But the membership, we've spent a lot of time on, and that will launch. We actually have a launch date. It's launching the 1st of May. So, you know, that's really exciting. I think I scared the pants off our marketing person the other day when I was like, so I picked a date, the 1st of May, and they were like, what do you mean? I'm like, yeah, let's get this going, you know. So that will be awesome too, and just another way to tap in. Obviously, we created Health Talks way back in the day, and I have to say that without doubt, absolutely catapulted those us four as a group, our presence in the wellness space at the time. And, that was, again, it was just an idea. I was like, well, how can we create something different? We did create high quality television, basically, and it was 8-minute segments, sometimes 10, sometimes 12. And if you haven't ever seen it, head over to YouTube and HealthTalks TV, and it's all sitting there. And it was really funny because when the idea of the membership and the radio show that sits within the membership came to life, I felt finally satisfied, in the sense that we created Health Talks, and then obviously one of our co-hosts, we parked Health Talks because it was expensive to create, let's be honest, and the remuneration over time wasn't there. And then obviously the beautiful Jess Ainscough passed away, and she was one of the original Health Talks crew, and it just didn't feel right to tap back into that again. It just didn't feel like that was the right thing to do. But we've kind of come over now with the radio show, and we're finding a new way to tap into that same type of information. So I'm so excited by that, because it is going to be like, nothing else that's out there at the moment in the health space, I believe. And I don't know, it'll be interesting to see, and hopefully people can tap in and tell me what they think. The first radio show is going to be accessible to everyone. You don't need to be a member to be able to listen to it. So as of the 1st of May, hopefully you subscribe to my website, and then you'll always have that information there at your ready, because subscribers get the early mail.
They do. I think what you say, everything's a choice, right? And how hate on social media, and you can hate on people doing things, or, in business, people are like, oh, they're already doing that, or, all those different things that can really get you down. But at the end of the day, it's a choice, and you can choose how you respond to it. You can see what people are doing on social media that's working for you. You can see the education, and you do have a choice. You all have a choice about who helps you in terms of who's facilitating your path. And for some people, it'll be someone like you, Nat, in the Chinese medicine space. For other people, it might be an integrative GP. For others, it would be a yoga teacher or an Ayurvedic practice, or there's so many different ways. And I guess the point of talking about the different modalities is to raise the awareness that these things actually exist, so people can look at where they connect. Some people it'll be chiropractic, some people it'll be all the different avenues.
I think what's really important there to remember too is that if you are putting yourself out there, and social media can be discouraging, obviously, people, especially in the early days, I was guilty. I'd check back in how many people are liking it, am I offending anyone? But I think one of the main things when I've mentored anyone that's sort of coming up and doing similar work, is that you just have to trust in any given moment that whoever needs to see whatever you're putting out there will see it, and the rest will follow. And if you're coming from that authentic place with what you're doing, and you are totally living, in your truth, then that will happen. It's when we try and be someone that we're not, because we can see that it might be working for them, that's not authentic, and it will be so much harder. So tap into that authenticity, do what you do because you love it, and educate your audience, and trust that whoever needs to see it in that moment will see it. So my 5 top fuels, can you hear me? Okay, I don't know why I can't hear you. Excellent. When you're talking about fuels, you're talking about what fuels me up, yeah? Okay, so number 1, first and foremost, is my family and my friends. I'm a social person. I need to be around others. It's quite funny because my husband's the complete opposite. but I need, that fills me up like nothing else. I was talking about, I went to Gwingana a few weeks ago and I wrote a piece on it on my blog because I was totally outside of my comfort zone. And the first 2 days I was like the first day I was begging to come home. I was like, I don't want to be here. I don't know anyone. I can't pick up my phone. I can't get on social media. This is the pits, mate. Like, this is just not for me. And then I kind of got, in my groove, and it was fine, and I surrendered to it. But I am that person that needs to be social. I also need to be around other women. I think we've disconnected from that, and that's a big issue. I think women need to be around women. They need to share. They need to learn. That's what's happened for all of time, and we've gotten to this point, in history, and we've kind of gone, oh, no, we just need to do everything on our own. And so I think, that comes as a next fuel, is being around your community, like building your tribe or your community of people that fill you up, that fuel you. We love the saying that it takes a village to raise a child. I'm like, yeah, no, that's true, but I think it takes a village to be a human being, right? And it doesn't necessarily need to be family that's around you, whatever your support network is, even if it's someone that you're paying to become, your nanny or your assistant, or even in business, who can you recruit to help you? It doesn't necessarily need to be a monetary exchange. It can be, I'll wash and fold your washing and you'll do, whatever it might be. You'll proofread my next blog post. I don't know, just as an idea. So I think being social, building your community of people, looking at how you nourish your body is so important as well. And I know it's very cliche, but if I don't say it, I wouldn't be doing my job, because what we've disconnected from is the fact that if we're not nourishing our body properly, if our body's not assimilating nutrients, if we're thinking horrible thoughts about ourselves or others, if we are, we've got emotions that we haven't dealt with from 1974, all of these things your body sees as stress. It doesn't know any other way to cope with it other than a stress response. So we need to minimize stress. So the best way that I know to do that is to nourish our bodies better in every aspect of that. So, it's about the food we're eating and making the choice. Like you said, it's a choice. And then I think the other thing is that if there are any known problems, then we need to look at, all right, what are they and how can we fix those as well? So being able to remedy something in any given moment, I think, is something that fuels me as well, to look at signs and symptoms and go, oh, okay, you've got ovulation pain, Nat. That's a clear sign of too much estrogen in your body this month. What are you going to do to fix that? And then my last thing that fuels me up is sunshine. Well, I just need that in my life so much. It's not funny. And the more I can get of that and the more I can get out in my environment. So I guess it's probably an environmental thing where I need to be outside and connecting with what's around me. Our environments are very powerful on our health, and more than we give it credit for. We are a product of our environment. So if we are in a space that isn't serving us, it could be a workspace, it could be home life, we're very good at putting things on hold. I'm guilty of that. We're living in a temporary housing situation, and it took me, a year of hating where I live, not hating, but not enjoying my space, to going, why am I living in limbo? Let's just make it everything I want it to be today, because I might not be here tomorrow. That would be stupid. So, just going in and doing what I need to do to make that environment a beautiful space. And we can do that in any given moment, I think, So I guess they're the 5 things that I would use as fuel to really fill me up.
I think they're fantastic, and apologies, I was chatting and I was on mute because there is a bit of a gardening action happening here in the background. I was chatting about authenticity, but I love what you've mentioned. I was just saying, in terms of, that's the first thing we do on the Grow Project, is we actually hook into the authenticity of who the person is and what they really want in life. We're going to chat this afternoon with Lindsay Boyd of Brand, of the business of brand, and talk about that, because we can create any brand. We can create you on the business side. If I give an example, we can create you a $200 million business, but if you want a $200,000 one, it's just not going to fill you up. It's never going to feel right. And authenticity is really important. And then I guess my specialty is specifically in environments. I do believe environment makes a massive difference. Myself, both in the corporate world, that's actually my original specialty, is creating high performance environments in high pressure situations, particularly in the sporting industry and in infrastructure construction. So massive multi-million and billion-dollar tenders. And how could I create an environment where people could succeed? And now I'm able to do that with people in their houses. And in the podcast series we've got coming up, we're actually chatting with Nicole Krieger, who's actually a specialist in clutter, and how that affects your energy. So the environment that you create is amazing, and you do have choices, and they're not all expensive, and that's part of the benefit of education and looking at the environment and the people and the connections, and housing is a massive one, and how you feel about that can really create energy. And if you don't have time and space in your life where you actually can go, okay, hang on, and have that moment of reflection, I think it's really difficult. I think a lot of people don't have time for reflection. Nat, I'd just like to ask you, and it does look like we've got a caller coming in for a question, which would be fantastic. I just wanted to ask you if you had any other fuels that relate to your business, perhaps, because I know you run an amazing business, and you are doing a tour with Lorna Jane, and you are just out there in the business space. And I wondered if they were doing. I hope everybody knows about you, and if they don't, they need to go and check you out, because you have amazing partnerships. You really are out there. And can you tell me about in business, perhaps a couple or three, maybe fuel sources of what fuels you specifically in your business space?
Yeah, it was interesting because money was never my motivation with business. It was like a bonus that came with it. But I think that there was possibly some blocks around that as well when it came to remuneration, and that was stuff that I had to work to. So I guess that there's always good that you can take from any sort of negative, I think. But so originally when we established the business, it was all about getting people in the door. And in doing that, all of a sudden I had all these people that wanted to be treated for fertility, and I didn't want to treat them. I was like, this is not what I signed up for. Like, I don't want to treat women's health. I don't want women who are hormonal, they're not really that fun to be around, So I resisted for so long. And then one day I was like, yeah, this is actually what I think I'm supposed to be doing. I'm just resistant to the fact because can't be bothered learning. I've been at uni for 10 and a half years. I don't want to keep going to uni. So, I really use that as fuel to get curious about learning more about that area, because I didn't really know that much about it, and I certainly wasn't equipped with what I learned at uni. So that really, I guess, patients' needs fueled me to look into where I needed to increase my skills around that. And then the more that happened, the more that we grew as a business. Then the other thing that became really important to me was being able to facilitate the team, because we have a team of staff, and, at any one given time, there's between 8 to 11 of us here. And that became really important to me as well. How can I support and give the staff what they need? Because I want them to love coming to work just as much as I do, and it not just be this hamster wheel that they were every day doing. So how could I do that? Because then if I could have happy patients and happy staff members, to me, that would equate to successful business, I think, in many senses anyway. And then, of course, the other thing that I think you need to have is the smarts about business too. And when it comes to, I think the number one thing that I have taken away from that is being fluid and adaptable, and nothing is permanent. And, for so long I just kept thinking I was such a failure in business because I never seemed to be able to get it right. Like, I had to keep changing and adapting and reassessing and modifying. I was like, crap, why can't I get this right? And then that was an epiphany in itself, because it was like, well, this is actually the way business is, and you're living it. And so when I surrendered to the fact that, hey, this is what it is, and part of that is not being rigid and always being adaptable and always reassessing and looking at the new goals and whatever else is needing to be reassessed, that's actually being successful in business. And that was a really big turning point, and it was actually really freeing as well to kind of accept that is actually, that's it, that's what it is. So those, I guess, are the three things that I really needed to invest in from a business perspective. And then obviously the remuneration eventually being around being fueled in abundance in many areas, one of those being financial as well. And again, there's ups and downs in that too, and that's the way the business goes. But I think yeah, we've been able to set some pretty good targets and goals and work towards those. Absolutely.
I think also the financial side of things is not why most people got into business. And it's really important to actually think about why you got into business, because it was generally that you identified an opportunity or you were really passionate about something, and that the financial side is actually really important and shouldn't be dismissed by any means, but it's about giving it meaning. And for me, it's certainly given, I've got a new meaning around money. And that's changed a lot in the last 12 months, because it actually means that I'm hitting the mark for me, because money is, as currency indicates by its word, it's an exchange of energy. And so for me to think about currency in a different way is that if I'm giving out in abundance and I'm also receiving, then it's a great exchange, and that money is actually a really good measure of that. And particularly in our Western world, it is the way that we live and we exchange. So it's interesting how perspective can give you a different
absolutely. And that's the thing too, you know, as practitioners and everything else that's done behind the scenes. And I think when you can get comfortable with exactly what you're saying, for me to say now I give a lot, I can actually hand on heart say I give a lot because I choose to. And, you know, within that becomes that remuneration. And it is really tricky as a practitioner to know where to come in on the market and how much are you going to charge. And, you know, we've certainly had to evolve that part of the business. But I, hand on heart, believe that when you're changing people's lives, that is actually invaluable. So you can't even put a value on that anyway. But that exchange is so important. And I know that if I give someone, or someone wins a free consultation for whatever reason, we've had a giveaway or something, they don't take it seriously. I don't take things seriously when I'm giving them either. I'd much rather pay for them, to be honest, even if it's discounted, because, you know, there's part of that exchange that needs to go on. Yeah,
it's part of the investment.
Exactly.
So what do you think the opportunity, Nat, is if we are well-fueled in our lives, be it from business, be it from working on our health and with people like you? What do you think the opportunity is?
Oh, it's endless. Like, how do you put, I don't even know. Like, to me, that's just, it's an open canvas of possibility. It's infinite. And also, I think based on my experience in business thus far, is that kind of everything evolves into the next stage, phase, project. I think having something on that canvas is a good idea in terms of what's next. But I think, like I said, also being a little bit fluid and adaptable, I think that's really important as well. You know, I've launched campaigns that have just died in the butt, and then I've been like, oh, well, that didn't really work, you know, let's move on. In the past, I probably would have dwelled on it or felt really bad that I was promised all of these things to people and hadn't been able to deliver. But, you know, let's repackage it and try it over here in a different way and see if that works. And I think that's part of, you know, we have to be open to the possibilities and see that blank canvas as an amazing thing, not as nothing's happening, because it's yours to paint, yeah?
Exactly. And it's only a mistake if we don't learn something from it, hey? So, Nat, today we've had the opportunity to have a wonderful conversation. You and I could chat, and probably will chat further for many hours to come. But most importantly, people can connect with you on natkringoudis.com. We are going to email them out all the details in exchange for their time today and checking us out and joining in on the conversation. We are going to email out a 30% discount code for Nat's debunking series, whether you're after either one of those 4 areas. So thank you very much for your generosity there, Nat. And we are also able to email you a copy of the Educate Yourself ebook that Nat has put together, which I am stoked about, because education is at the heart of what we do and what we think will really change the world. So thank you very, very much for joining us, Nat. For everyone, we hope that you are enjoying the 7-Day Business Fuel Challenge and you are looking at what fuels you. If you haven't already, download the printable and look at all the different areas that could be fueling you to provide you with some insight as to how you can grow your business and grow yourself. Of course, follow us on the social media side of things at The Grow Project on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, and keep up to date on all our events like the Grow Lab or our Grow Experiments series, or you can catch us on the podcast as well. Keep an eye out at RebeccaNewmanOnline.com.au. Thanks again, Nat, and thank you everybody for tuning in. We look forward to catching you again soon. Grow Project. Ciao, ciao.